Joining us now from Capitol Hill is the senior senator from Florida, Marco Rubio. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
So let's talk about the situation in the House. House Republicans now have their fourth speaker nominee in just 3 weeks. Level with me here. Do you think the fourth time is really going to be the charm?
I don't know. I'm not a House member. I'm not involved in those meetings. I have no control over it, and I try not to spend time worried about things I can't control. Obviously, we want the House to be open for business and functioning. We can't pass anything. We can't fund the government. We can't provide aid, for example, to Israel or Taiwan or any of the other things people want to do without a House in place. So it sounds like they might have something done today, and we'll move forward from there. I think that's good news. But, you know, like I said, I mean, they're not asking senators for our opinion, and you know, we're not involved in that process.
So what does this long struggle to elect a speaker say about the state of the Republican Party right now?
Well, I think it says that, you know, anytime when you grow your party to a majority, you know, so you have them in a country as opinionated as ours is, with a lot of different points of view, you almost are creating like coalitions in a parliamentary system, right? You're bringing together different groups under the umbrella of one party, but with different takes on issues, and so you have some variety there. And sometimes that breaks out into the open. Yeah, we see that in our party. We see that across the country. You know, we have Republicans that are considered very moderate, who are governors and senators and so forth, and we have some that are considered very conservative. And that's what happens in a country as diverse as ours ideologically, especially if you want to be in the majority. So I think some of that is in play here. The other machinations behind the scenes, you know, I don't know all the personalities, so I really can't opine beyond that. But a couple weeks from now, if they get this settled today and we get back to work, it'll be something people will talk about, but hopefully, you know, won't no longer be relevant.
Let's talk about some of the issues at hand. It's been 18 days since Hamas's surprise attack on Israel. What do you think the U.S.'s role should be in this conflict?
Well, we have two roles to play. The first is to provide Israel resupply, and they're going to need it. And obviously, they'll need a lot more if it becomes a two-front conflict. Like, so if they have a war going on with Hezbollah at the same time as Hamas, that's a very different situation than a Gaza-only situation. The second is support on the international stage, as we've been doing on a bipartisan basis, explaining the reality of the situation. It is great and pleasant. It is unfortunate, but Israel has no choice but to go in and demilitarize Gaza and take apart Hamas's ability to threaten them this way in the foreseeable future. And so I think that support is critical. I think one of the challenges that's emerging now is these proxy groups in Syria and in Iraq who are enabled by Iran are now attacking U.S. troops. The administration is not being forthcoming and honest with the American people about the fact that Iran is not just encouraging these attacks, they're enabling them. And I warned about this 11 days ago. We've lost deterrence when it comes to Iran. They think that they can get these groups to attack us and not take responsibility or face consequences for it. And, you know, now that's a very difficult thing to unpack. And look, it's a very troubling time. There's a lot of tenuous pieces in place here. This could break out into a much broader conflict. We have no choice but to respond, in my view, to attacks against U.S. troops. And I don't think it's going to be limited to just Syria and Iraq if this continues. I hope I'm wrong, but that's not where it seems to be headed. So this is not an easy or pleasant situation, but it is unfortunate that we have to confront it, but we must confront it at this point.
And Senator, you have also spoken out against packaging U.S. funding for Israel with additional funding for Ukraine. Why do you think this is not the best strategy moving forward?
Because even though I've been a supporter of funding Ukraine, I know there are many members in the Senate, and seems to be a majority of Republicans in the House that have qualms about it. I don't want to hold up Israel aid, which has almost unanimous support for Ukraine. I think that should be dealt with separately, simply from a dynamic of Israel cannot afford at this point, given the state of this conflict, to have any sort of delay or any sort of question about whether the U.S. is going to resupply them. One of the strategies of Israel's enemies is to overwhelm them so that their stockpiles are depleted, and Israel has to start making very hard choices about whether they protect military sites or civilian sites. And we can't allow anything happening on our end here to encourage these enemies to read about this or hear about this and think, well, now is the time to really ramp up our attacks. So my fear is that because of divisions or differences of opinion on Ukraine, we're going to hold up Israel funding, which has near unanimous support. And so I think from just a tactical perspective, it makes sense to separate the two.